In this chapter, we will review the instructions for switching out the leather boot with the new active heel traction boot on a universal hip distractor and a well leg holder. Retrofit kits for both the universal hip distractor and well leg holder are available for purchase. Please note that the comprehensive active heel traction boot retrofit kit instructions for use are shipped with the product and should be followed. Reference these instructions for all appropriate notes, cautions, and warnings. If this document has been misplaced, please call your local customer service department for a replacement. The IFU number is 106-00773, which apply to the active heel traction boot retrofit instructions for both the universal hip distractor and well leg holder. The universal hip distractor retrofit kit replaces the leather boot, footplate, and boot ball joint. The well leg holder retrofit kit replaces the leather boot and carriage. You do not need to repurchase the well leg holder beam or distractor mast with the use of these retrofit kits. This retrofitting process can be easily performed on site and without the need for special equipment or training. Most of the tools you need to retrofit a distractor mast or well leg holder are included in the retrofit kits. You will want to have a flathead screwdriver or pliers on hand for the well leg holder retrofit. Before beginning, you should carefully unpack and inspect all components shipped with the Smith+Nephew hip positioning system retrofit kits. If any parts are broken or missing, do not use the equipment and contact an authorized Smith+Nephew representative. We're going to begin with the universal hip distractor assembly. First, remove the perineal pad and post for better access. Next, unlock the distractor mast by turning the orange positioning handle and place the mast in the vertical position, releasing the positioning handle to lock it in place. Please note that a universal hip distractor assembly can also be retrofitted by removing the distractor mast from the system and placing it on a flat surface. Using the provided 5/32" Allen wrench, remove the 4 screws located at the bottom of the boot ball joint on the distractor carriage. There may be some initial resistance as you break the loctite seal. Be sure to support the ball joint with a free hand, so it does not fall off the post when removing the 4th and final screw. Now that all the screws are unfastened, remove the foot plate and ball joint from the carriage. With the boot detached, orient the replacement boot connector and ball joint so that the flat side of the boot connector is facing away from the carriage handle crank. Beginning with a single screw, apply a small amount of the supplied loctite to the threads. Please note that loctite dries quickly once applied, so be sure to have the screws and hex wrench handy. Insert the screw into an open screw hole and tighten with the Allen wrench, ensuring it threads into the ball joint housing. Prior to inserting the remaining 3 screws, attach the active heel traction boot to the boot connector by sliding the boot slot onto the connector. This is to verify that the ball joint is attached in the correct orientation. In the correct position, the opening of the boot should be facing away from the orange positioning handle on the distal end of the distractor mast and towards the OR table. If the boot and ball joint are oriented correctly, remove the boot from the boot connector using the quick disconnect button. If not, remove the screw, position the boot and ball joint correctly, and start over. Once you have verified that the ball joint is oriented correctly, apply Loctite to the second screw. Insert the screw into an open screw hole and tighten. Again, ensure the screw threads into the ball joint housing. Repeat with the remaining 2 screws. Once you have finished screwing down the ball joint to the carriage, reattach the boot. Then pull on the boot connector and ball joint to ensure that it is tightly secured to the carriage. Allow the Loctite to dry for 24 hours prior to using the retrofitted system. After the Loctite has completely dried, the active heel traction boot is ready to be used with the Distractor mast. Your universal hip distractor retrofit is now complete. Next, we're going to retrofit the well leg holder. Begin by placing the well leg holder beam on a flat surface. Remove the orange cap at the end of the well leg holder beam using a flathead screwdriver or pliers. Don't worry about damaging the cap. A replacement cap is provided in the retrofit kit. Using the provided 5/32 inch hex or Allen wrench and the round end of the provided box wrench, remove the screw at the end of the well leg holder beam near the orange cap. Slide the old well leg holder carriage off the beam and set aside. Now, insert the replacement shim into the replacement carriage. The shim should fit between the two bottom screws on the inside of the carriage attachment. Holding the replacement shim in place, slide the new well leg holder carriage onto the beam. Make sure that the flat side of the boot connector is facing away from the distal end of the well leg holder beam. Attach the active heel traction boot to the boot connector by sliding the boot slot onto the connector. Check that the replacement carriage is attached in the correct orientation. The open end of the boot should be facing away from the distal end of the beam. If it's oriented properly, move on to the next step. If it isn't, remove the carriage, turn it around, and slide it onto the well leg holder beam again. Once oriented correctly, remove the boot from the boot connector using the quick disconnect button. Now slide the carriage to the center of the beam and tighten the orange carriage knob to ensure that the shim is in place correctly. Once you have verified that the shim is in place, gather the provided screw, nut, Loctite, box wrench, and hex wrench. Now that you have all of the materials nearby, apply a small amount of Loctite to the threads of the provided screw and insert it into the end of the well leg holder beam where the old screw was removed. Hold the nut in place on the inside of the beam using the box wrench and tighten the screw down firmly. The last step is to apply a small amount of Loctite to the inside edge of the provided orange cap and slide it onto the end of the well leg holder beam. Allow the Loctite to dry for 24 hours prior to using the retrofitted system. After the Loctite has completely dried, the active heel traction boot is ready to be used with the well leg holder. Your well leg holder retrofit is now complete.